Right, kick off with some geopolitics. Story coming out of this area is Sudan and South Sudan actually finalizing a major security agreement to jointly protect oil infrastructure and key pipeline pumping stations.
Necessary. Just looking at how the oil situation between South Sudan and Sudan has always been a bone of contention. Pundits would say that it's a good thing that both countries are talking.
True.
First of all, to say that, okay, we agree on this at the very least. This is a good thing in terms of development, absolutely. We also know that because of the war, whether it's Juba or whether it's Khartoum, that installations have always been targets for fire. And not necessarily fire, but fire.
It is pragmatic by all means.
Yes.
But without real border or broader even trust, as far as I can see, basically this pact may end up just being another signature over suspicion. That's it.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so I'm really laughing, but let's go west, shall we?
Okay.
Because pictures came out, and we see, are they caricatures? They're effigies. of Cameroon's president, Paul Biya. 92 years old, the man can come out to campaign to save his life, literally. And here we see these effigies of him and his wife campaigning. The irony has knocked me down and ironed me flat. Because if you cannot get out to campaign, what's the likelihood that you will then be able to run for office and then run office? Already we have issues. We can't have presidents in diapers.
No. But I was just thinking. I mean, the person who I'm sure he was commissioned. He or she, I have to be gender balanced, must have been paid a lot because.
My goodness.
He used a lot of paper mache from what I can see.
What can an effigy say that a president cannot?
You know. And the dancing, there was like this hand movement that was, and I was like, okay, fine.
Geppetto would have been proud.
But what worries me is that you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm sure somebody's going to come up with something
that's going to get crazier. It's unbelievable the things that we'll do. And then you wonder why. Look.
And absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And not holding on for dear life at 92, what more is he going to get? And I'm not saying anything bad about him per se, but surely at 92, what else is he going to be able to?
You've been president for 40 plus years. You've been around the block. You've bought the T-shirt. You've
done your bit.
You're good.
But I'm sure other African leaders are looking at him saying, that's my guy. That's my guy.
Strong man has nothing on you.
So what else do we have in the dockets? Right. Other stories coming out?
Well, it's interesting because you can connect it directly to what we're seeing happening coming out of Egypt, where there's an investigation into this 4,000-year-old limestone still to the 6th dynasty. 6th. You can imagine what was happening then, and in terms of what it would do for the archaeology of Egypt. It's been stolen. Wow. It's been reported stolen.
Allegedly, okay.
Allegedly. This is out of Saqqara. So the question, from a tomb, no less.
Yeah, how?
In Saqqara. So that's the thing. The investigation asking how. We know Egypt, of course, to be artifact, archaeological, all of this. It contributes significantly to the country's makeup. So if that thing is gone.
So Egypt sells history as heritage, and yet it can't safeguard anything at home.
You would wonder how somebody got into a tomb, which one would assume had been protected. And then why steal this one specifically? Is there a message beyond this particular thing?
I think there's an aspect of profit. That's
well, look, you're going to sell something like that. The chatter will be very loud. That such a thing is on the market.
It's not something you're going to go shop with. I'll go take that from the shelf. Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Yeah.
Actually, the movie I was thinking about was History of the World, Mel Brooks. That's the one, yeah. So wrapping up, unless you have something else, I'm going to come home.
All right.
Basically. Kenya announces plans to establish a sovereign wealth and infrastructure fund to boost investment and finance key projects. How many times have we heard that before?
Many times.
And?
The call has been that the people to borrow from are Kenyans, not domestic banks.
Okay.
Domestic banks will then be forced to give their money in terms of loans to SMEs.
Okay.
And that way what you do is boost the economy.
Yeah.
That is the idea, because that's what a sovereign bond is. That people bring their money essentially and give it to government, and government can then now, work for a profit. Well, and then that domestic banks will be forced to lend unsecured to Kenyans or to, their people.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, inadvertently boosting the economy because you've put money in SMEs. If this happens, it would be a fantastic thing.
Well, the vision, they're very much sound, but the timing is a bit suspect. Because you can't. I'm looking at it. I'm saying you can't store wealth that you haven't built.
This is it.
There's a problem. Unless anchored by transparency and some form of fiscal restraint, there has to be fiscal restraint. These funds become vaults for just
all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially vanity.
True.
All right.
That's what it looks like on the week that was.
Time to kick off panel 54. From Cairo to Cape Town, Lagos to Lamu. 54 nations, one continent, countless perspectives. Hi, I'm Waweru and Njoroge.
I'm Okoh.
Welcome to Panel 54, a global perspective through an African lens. This is the podcast where we unpack power, policy, people, and the paradoxes that define our time. With nuance, with history, and a deliberate commitment to context. This isn't punditry, it's perspective. It's not a briefing, it's a reframing, and it starts right here.
Diplomacy is supposed to be Africa's quiet weapon, the art of securing influence without firing a shot. But somehow, our presence on the world stage remains louder than our influence. Africa sends more peacekeepers to UN missions than Europe and Asia combined. Over 50,000 troops and police in the field. Yet, not a single African country holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council.
We host summits, sign communiques, and issue joint statements, but foreign policy still resets every 5 years with each administration. Our ambassadors serve at the pleasure of politicians, not institutions. Meanwhile, smaller states like Qatar and Norway, with populations a fraction of Africa's continent, consistently punch above their weight because their diplomacy doesn't expire with elections.
So, today we ask, why has Africa, a continent of immense talent and moral capital, failed to build enduring statecraft? And what would it take to turn our foreign policy from ceremonial to strategic? To help us unpack this, we're joined by Ambassador Tom Amolo, veteran diplomat, former ambassador to Germany, and principal strategist at Diplomacy Without Borders. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you, Ndu Okoh.
All right.
My relative, and it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Balozi, Karibu Sana.
Relative of my good friend Eddie. Thank you very much. What do you want to know?
There we go. If Africa was to get a seat at the table, what are some of the things that we must do to achieve that leverage? Financial security? Are we looking at financial sovereignty, policy, a clear strategy? Or will you need unified units who've already gotten all of this economic development sorted out?
Well, for me, looking at specifically diplomacy, is why have certain diplomacies worked? Why have certain plans to move as a nation worked? And so, if you look at Singapore, China, and you realize there's a governing philosophy, there's a raison d'être. Why do we exist? Is there a common ideology that unites us, that says this is where we are, and this is the direction we need to go? And if you look at us, that raison d'être existed immediately after independence. Thereafter, the struggle for us to grab resources to become wealthy, in other words, to become like our former oppressors, came to the top. And of course, we did manage to enable the majority of our people attain influence and wealth. But if you look at what drives a nation forward and sustains it, is to have an enduring philosophy of existence. In other words, we are here because we want Kenya in the next 200 years to look like this, that vision thing. And that desire to make the country that enables us to now create policies. Our diplomacy will look like this. Mm-hmm. We will train better. We will make our diplomacy look like the country. We will not second guess who's good and who's not. And although we are political governments, and indeed any nation, any political government has to be able to put its people in certain positions all the time.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you do that, even in diplomacy and diplomatic networks, you could do a job of mixing the talent pool, get some of your good guys who are in the political circle, and make sure that they're trained or underwrite them, make sure that the people who work with them show them the path, as it were. That's happening. So that's the first thing. The second thing is stability of leadership. We have elections every 4 or 5 years. And I put it to you that every government will want to have its face in its diplomatic entities. So why don't you have the diplomatic corps that you own, that is yours, already have your face? So you don't need to pick from outside. Have a crop like the Brazilians do, like the Indians do, like the Norwegians do, like the Germans do. Of course, at some point or the other, for certain positions, like in the UN and so on, they'll pick whoever it is that's closest to the leadership. Then I would also argue that we say that there's a deficit. I would argue that all diplomacy has continuity.
Okay.
With emphasis.
Yes.
Depending on the sovereign. Okay? The sovereign being the head of state in our case. So you'd find, for example, we got into independence in 1963. President Kenyatta, his diplomats and his administrators were there for many years because that's the nature of the political terrain.
But you talk about not reinventing the wheel. With these elections that we see across the continent happening every 4 to 5 years, we also see that foreign policy will change with the new administration. And we keep rebuilding foreign policies across board. There's no continuity per se. And with the new administrations come new things. Does that help or hurt this process?
I would argue, Okoh, that it doesn't. There's continuity. If you look at where South Africa was in 1994,
right,
and now there's still a certain ethos of the principles of self-determination, territorial integrity, build from the bottom, let the people, let us enable most of us to thrive, and that enables your foreign policy to thrive. That continues. What there will be is emphasis. Thabo Mbeki, for example, African Renaissance, he wanted the whole continent to punch at a certain level, and he coalesced a group of leaders like him to push that agenda. You see a difference now with the challenges of economics. You find leaders saying, let us now instead emphasize regional integration, okay? Within our SADC, EAC, we have COMESA going on right now.
Yeah.
So the emphasis changes, but the national interest remains the same with nuance. So the elections, for example, let's go to another country. Nigeria is a mineral-rich country. It's still struggling to manage its resources, okay? But its foreign policy has always been upfront, pushing for Africa's dominance, pushing for the principles of self-determination, pushing for the issues of territorial integrity.
But that's the problem, Ambassador, that can you push for such issues if in your backyard these things that you push for externally are not working? And this is why is it not easy to have European integration, for example, because you're never going to suffer to take a cheap flight, for example, from Copenhagen to Paris. But here, Nigeria, perfect example, we're asking for recognition on a global scale, but we can't keep the lights on for 24 hours. Can you ask for a unified external approach if in your own backyard things are not working that would guarantee that approach externally?
I agree with you in a way. But you see, you can't give up, even within Nigeria now. Whereas the current government is grappling with these issues, there are people within Nigeria saying, we are not going to give up. And even that, the government itself is saying, look, I may have these enormous challenges behind me, but I cannot give up because they're not going to change these things overnight. It has to be that our leadership has to, if you have a governing philosophy that says, I want my people to thrive by 2030, and you make some steps in that direction. But at the same time, there is the inertia of corruption. Tom Amolo wants to steal more than he puts in the table. That's always going to happen. But we need to be able to have a body of people enough to push back so that the country and the continent is able to make at least one step forward. I'm beginning to see that's shaping up recently. And if you just talk about elections, some of the positive things that have happened lately is what happened in Malawi. Where an election took place. No stones were thrown. No. My relatives didn't throw stones, and there was no fires, but people didn't die. And the guy said, okay, thank you guys, I'm out of here. That's a good sign. But you see, the guy that comes after him should now not take that as an opportunity to enlarge his pockets. Okay? And if he is able as well to say, with this that I've been given, I'm going to push the next agenda. And one of the things that attract me to the Asian philosophy, such as Singapore, is almost a Buddhist mindset of delayed gratification. I'm not going to eat all my cake at once. I'm going to take a tip, a little bit, and enable the rest to come along, and then we build this together. Recently in some Asian country, one big person was hanged. I won't name the country, you know which one it is. It's an Asian country. So after a period of time, people realize that if we walk this journey together, we hold back our desire to steal or to rob the polity or to rob the system. We can get to the promised land together. And I believe very strongly that where we are as a continent, I'm not pessimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. And I think we have the tools to do that.
Okay. Now, as always, and this comes up pretty much in every conversation when you start looking at Africa as a continent, and Singapore always comes up as the poster child as a comparison. But you worked in Germany as an ambassador. And we know how, and this again might come from a comparison perspective or looking at mirroring and things like that. But Germany built itself up from post-war destruction, basically. And the way it built itself up was anchored on bureaucracy, not personalities. We've discussed the aspect of how personalities, trying to delink personalities from the actual institutions themselves. Germany currently has 12,000 career diplomats working over 25-year plans. Not these 5-year cycles, or 4 or 5 year cycles we've talked about. And this is why Germany always ranks consistently high amongst the top world 5's reliability and trust. Now, Africa, by contrast, again, we've mentioned this, works by election cycles and timetables, right? I want to go away from the aspect of doing comparisons and asking, do we actually over-romanticize Western efficiency?
No, we don't.
And as a follow-up to that one, actually, do we over-romanticize it, or are there aspects that we should look at borrowing and incorporating or folding into what we do? Things like the Continental Foreign Policy Council. And how do we build that discipline without copying European wholesale? What do we do to make it African?
Thank you. You see, Waweru, Germany. Germany's diplomacy is centuries old. And it started from Imperial Germany into the Weimar Republic, into when the nation was split, to the reunification 35 years ago last week. And if you look at immediate post-war, Second World War Germany, two things. One, on the economic front, there was an individuals with strong vision. Ludwig Erhard, who came up with the economic principles. You heard of the economic miracle, Wirtschaftswunder. Okay? It came out of how we're going to mobilize a society in a way that all of us can go together. And out of that, there's an interesting economic model which I had thought we could emulate. Okay. In many ways we do in Kenya.
Right.
Which is the Mittelstand, the middle group, middle level, small and medium scale, we call it in Kenya. But what it is that every sector of the economy is managed or held by small and medium scale groups. In Germany, that's 500 workers and more. In Kenya, it could be less. But the point I'm making is that the evolution of the German society, okay, had cadence, it had history, it evolved. And secondly, to back it up, it built institutions. The institutions, such as the German Foreign Ministry, is clearly demarcated. You get in at a certain level, you do exams, you're the best and the brightest, and you have a career path. At the same time, the political government has its own people. Okay, when it comes in, it doesn't shake the boat, it doesn't shake the tree. It enables those who are there to thrive, but it also brings in its people at a certain level who will bring the political nuance they require to move the country forward. The former foreign minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, is now the president of the UN General Assembly. But that is a plan that Germany had. If you look at even the way the German embassy in Nairobi operates, is that they have a plan, which I would argue, or not I know the Kenyan diplomatic service has a plan, and each of the plans are measured or cut up to suit specific areas. In Germany, we had ours. The European diplomats or ambassadors in Europe have a certain way of looking at the big plan and cutting it up to suit what the nation needs to deliver. And we cascade it to our diplomats. The big picture, the driver of the delivery of the diplomacy is the ambassador. I used to say in all the posts I've worked in that I am the culture ambassador. I am the trade ambassador. I am the diaspora ambassador. And all of that put in, but you have your troops,
right?
Okay, and you have to deliver off a plan. Okay. So anyway, the point I'm making is that now this is Kenya. I know Kenya, and I know what we've done from the time I joined diplomacy in '83. It has evolved much better. When I joined, there was no real plan. There's a bunch of things you're supposed to look at. You dove in, the sovereign had a plan, and you delivered. Now, before you leave town, you have a piece of paper.
Right.
It's called your performance contract.
Okay.
I had one.
Okay.
All of us do. You countersign it with the permanent secretary, the principal secretary, I'm told. And you're supposed to account to it. And you cascade that to your guys. Now we have a diaspora State Department. And that one also is supposed to deliver on certain objectives.
Okay.
So now, let's go to other countries. maybe other countries don't have the rigor and this kind of detail we have. And I know that for sure because I know the East African region very well. They don't have this, okay? But our diplomacy has this. Now, is that a failing in some countries? For many countries it is, because it ends up being shoot and miss. This comes up, oh my goodness, we're going to run in this direction.
Right.
And then countries that I respect, most of the countries that I respect in the diplomatic world are the North African ones.
Okay.
Egypt, Algeria, Morocco. Clear demarcated goals, clear objectives. The Algerian one is very ideologically driven out of, say, things like self-determination. And you find them natural allies. Okay? And so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So Africa has an ability to build on this coalition of excellence, if you will, to drive an agenda similar to what Thabo Mbeki had, to make the continent really thrive at a certain level. But you also need leadership. And the leadership sometimes, especially what I've seen now coming up, is sometimes we get crabs in a barrel, where when country A begins to notch itself up, there is almost an equal desire to bring them down. That's happening in Africa.
As opposed to other countries trying to step up?
Exactly, like in Europe. The crabs in a barrel phenomenon is always pushed back because they have a supranational entity called the European Union that is governed by certain rules. Okay? In our case, you find especially people who, heads of state, who have come into office recently and are trying to punch at a certain level. More often than not, you'll find a certain recalcitrance, some of the peers, to go in the direction. So we also have to realize we're Africans, and to carry the story, you have to bring all of them together with you.
True.
I also feel very strongly that with us, we have to work against sibling rivalry. Because you see a country going up and you say, oh my goodness, I don't have that. We should have the mentality that a rising boat lifts all the boats. A rising tide lifts all the boats. And if you have that, then you have shared prosperity, and your people can come up together. But when you see Okoh driving a Range Rover, and you say, she can't have that, let's pull her down, you should say, wow, let us also be like Okoh. And if she got that through that system, let us enable our system also to look like that.
If I can throw in an example, because I think about it and I wonder, what really are we trying to move tea to Nigeria, tea, which doesn't grow indigenously in Nigeria, but it does in Kenya. And close to 100% of the tea drunk by Nigerians is imported. And here is Kenya on the eastern side of the continent that could easily enter into trade agreements, whether through individuals or country. But the bottlenecks in order to move tea for uptake are incredible. To go from Nairobi to Morocco, you have to go to Dubai first. It's cheaper to fly from Lagos to Dubai and then South Africa than it is to go directly from Lagos to South Africa. I mean, these are some of the things that we're talking about here.
One of my colleagues, retired now, Elfas Barine Mugendi, he was our High Commissioner in Ghana, and he organized for a consignment of tea to move from Kenya to Accra. It was dentistry. It was dentistry. It was really difficult. Equally, I was there as High Commissioner for Kenya to Nigeria. We even had a possibility of a deal between a trade agreement between our two governments to manage even the sale of tea. But there were so many impediments, such as, and these are NTBs, non-tariff barriers, the internal commercial class pushed back because you enable Kenyan tea to come in here. I am the principal importer of Lipton tea.
There we go.
I am going to stop this.
Absolutely.
Even one of Nigeria's biggest business people is struggling to get his refinery to get a decent amount of airtime, if you will. So these are definite challenges. And the heads of state really have to look at this. And it's a difficult one because the same business people enable them to get into office. You need their money and their influence to get elected. And so when you get elected, you need to take care of their interests. But this has to be managed.
Do we wait, or what can we trade off right now? If they were to say, okay, fine, we'll open. And this would happen, I guess, with a lot of African countries when democracy was brought in. There was concessions we had to make. We had to say, okay, fine, your foreign policies or your human rights records, et cetera, we will pump in aid, but you guys have to do certain items on this checklist. So if we were to say, fine, let's take concessions, and we say, we're not going to stand hard. We say we'll give some concessions. So we have a generation now, not 50 generations later, who are now sitting at the UN Security Council table. So there's many things I've said there. But what I'm saying is that, fine, they have to at least say, we're willing to let you in. And if it's on conditionalities, do we then say, okay, fine, we're willing to accept that so we can we get our foot in the door in the first place, rather than standing hard and saying, no, we're going to wait for those 2 seats with veto.
Well, point taken, but I put it to you. In my minimal experience in diplomacy, there has to be a big push.
Okay.
Unrelenting. Unrelenting. And it has to come from all angles. Number one, from where the bully pulpit, where President Ruto spoke the other day, and his colleagues. It has to be a constant refrain of we want it yesterday. So that's number one, at the top from the sovereign. Number two, the communities where these heads of state come from have to repeat and energize this message. We also want to have it. We have to be wanting to have this piece of the cake. The regular citizens, the Amolos, the Wawerus, the Okohs. And we have to speak it constantly. It's not their battle only. And I put it to you that some of the most potent warriors we have on the continent today are the Gen Zs. And the other day, I'll speak about this later, President Ruto is a champion of reform in the African Union, institutional reform. And one of the things we discussed the other day, about a few weeks ago, how to energize the reform process. And it became clear that we have to bring everybody on board, but specifically the younger generation. And let's say younger generation. Of course, I'm very young.
Yeah, we can see that.
And I'm technically able to manage TikTok and so on.
Right.
But I think we're speaking of a demographic that needs to be brought in. And the thing is that if we go as a body and we're unrelenting, they will give up. And periodically, when we have things that they want, and we say, hang on a minute, this thing you want, mineral X called cobalt from southwest Mugirango, I don't think you can get it until we have that. And they try to twist our arms and say, okay, we'll leave it out for a bit, but we have to be in other words, we have to be thirsty. We have to be thirsty. We cannot just mouth it, go back to our laurels and say, okay, we did. We made a good speech. Yep. Hey, did you see it? Top notch. So we have to it has to be a whole of Africa approach. And I think that will work. So what happens tomorrow? They say, okay, Africa, you want it. Great stuff. Hey, give us 2 of your guys. Give us two of you guys.
Who are you giving?
Who are you giving?
Then what?
And then who's going to decide? Oh, okay, we'll give to Kenya and Uganda.
But
no.
why? But why?
But why? And then so what I argue is, if we have a process internally where we quietly agree,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
You're okay. You're okay. So we push these two.
But if we do, I mean, we have francophone and anglophone issues. The AU was a very good example of how we can't really coalesce. We can't get together from that perspective. We always seem to have, not always, but unless it's the World Cup, but we have a divide where there's still North versus South, and that is reflected even in the way everything works, energy, whatever the case may be.
My argument is that that divide is waning. The francophone.
Would you say it's artificial, by the way?
No, it is does exist.
But has it been forced? Has it been artificially created and kept there so that
it exists? Of course.
Or is it? I'm a conspiracy theorist. That's what I want to.
Yeah, good old Waweru has to be conspiracy.
But of course,
the reality is, this is a tool of division. And when you divide a continent based on language, and then tribe, and then clan, and then wealth, you're going to keep them fighting each other. Now, they have an opportunity where you see some parts of the Sahel saying, hey, first of all, we're African. So, and we, the leaders of today, have to be able to push through an agenda that's consistently African. Suddenly, you hear, we're Lusophone, and these guys are, for example, in West Africa now, there are people called Obama, Equatorial. They speak Spanish, but they just a Luo man like me or something. Yeah. So we need to break these barriers of, and we need to work assiduously at it. So there is an opportunity where the weaknesses that have arisen, or the divisions, or the gaps that have come about, where people are no longer identifying themselves as Lusophone, Anglophone, especially among the younger people.
Like you said, they're leading.
already there, isn't it?
Yeah, the young people. I mean, a young man from, I worked all over the continent, the world. A young man who graduated from University of Cape Town works as easily in Singapore as it does in Lagos, as it does in Nairobi. And his only thing is, can I make a buck? My generation is very, I want to go home and I want to live there. Their generation is, I want to enjoy the Formula One in Singapore. I want to go to Dubai. I want to live in Chile. I have a friend, a young lady, who said, I think I want to go and spend some time in South America. She's a fluent Spanish speaker. So this is the generation that's going to make the break for us. And we need to nurture them, build them into a formidable diplomatic weapon to drive our agenda. And we can provide guidance at the top, or if you will, at the spearhead. But we need to build this body of young Africans to drive our agenda.
I think you go into maybe like the final part of what we're talking about today, when you talk about, standing up and then being able to not be a second class Mzungu Bote, first class African. And we see this, though diplomacy is patient, though it works out, in meetings, in communiques, but sometimes the world only moves because somebody breaks the rhythm.
There you go.
Isn't it? And we'll give an example, of Donald Trump. And the world was in the throes of the Israel-Palestine conflict. He set out a 20-point agenda for peace. And he said, you know what, guys? This is the way in which we should go. Not asking questions, not asking favor. Many would have thought it would have been divisive, but what it did is that it gave folks an opportunity to actually sit at the table and discuss these things. Today, we have a ceasefire as a result of that, going against the conventional ways of sitting in a boardroom and saying, well, can we discuss this? Or so, come on, sit at the table, discuss this thing, stop the carnage. And today we have...
I completely agree. In fact, you see... What United States Donald Trump has done is thankfully, the United States is a strong power, and people listen to them. If it was country X, I wouldn't name the European country, I would not listen to them. Used to be a power 140 years ago, not now. USA has the ability to tell you, sit at table and talk about this thing, okay? And it's got friends around the world. So the influence of the United States and the specific spearheading by the sovereign, Donald Trump, caused this change. Because they also calculate, the players calculate, and see what is my benefit, what is my loss. If I don't play this game now, down the line I lose a lot more, so I'm going to play this. So one has to argue that transactionalism has its benefit.
Yes.
The old adage of principles being the driver of diplomacy has its merit, but sometimes, as in this case, you create a deal around a transaction. If you do this, we'll do this, and this will happen. This has worked. And one of the things that clearly drove this is, of course, the hostages, which thankfully now will be released, and of course the situation of the people of Gaza. And for us in Kenya, the one principle that stands out is self-determination. Hopefully, that group of people called Palestinians, or that group of people who live there, will have an opportunity to build their own future away from being roped in by a terrorist group, Hamas, that will rope them in and cause them not to develop. So it's a fantastic opportunity. And I, for one, I was looking in the media to see if our government has extolled this incredible development. I'm sure it's out because I haven't seen, but it's something we need to praise. And October 7, today is October 9, 2 years down the line, and this has happened. Let's hope, and the interlocutors have to ensure that the deal is agreed to.
Right.
Can you imagine being in a hole for the past 2 years? It's a terrible thing. So again, transactionalism, leadership from the front works, and there's a perfect outcome of strong diplomacy.
As we wrap this up, I'm going to go back to the aspect of DNA as a continent. The way, whether it's ethnic or whatever the case may be, I know from growing up, you're always, the way we're taught, respect your elders, and you talked about it slightly in terms of we go into conferences and we kind of look like we're humbled. I suppose some people might mistake politeness for principle. You talked about the aspect of principle. But can African leaders get some of that Trump energy? Trump energy, do what I say, say what I mean, and actually do it without actually losing credibility and the aspect of moral authority, especially the moral authority.
Well, you'll be happy to note that a lot of African leaders were quietly elated with the evolved transactionalism that came out of the Trump White House, where me first. But me first without borders is deadly, because principles still suffuse relations. And you cannot say me first and go, okay, country X took territory Y. We too, in our neck of the woods in Africa, will take this part of the border and grab their minerals.
Right.
Okay? Sadly, that has become something that is doable. So, whereas one would say transactionalism, or the ability to do something because you want to do it and you have the ability, it has to be managed through principles. It has to be managed, especially in our continent. Part of the reason why countries like Kenya thrive is we're a small country. We try to punch at or above our weight. But the things that enable us to thrive is we push a rules-based ethos. Okay, that drives our diplomacy.
Okay.
And although they say multilateralism is dead or is dying, this ethos, we buttress it with robust multilateralism. And for us, if we're able to manage this transactionalism, but keep it within certain parameters, I think we'll thrive.
Okay.
Let me just finish with one thing.
Sure.
The institution that drives the continent, the African Union, has to revitalize. It has to rethink how we do business.
Yeah.
Everything from financing itself, financing its peacekeeping, financing its delivering to the people. Like I said, we had a session the other day, and you've heard of the model UN.
I participated.
You're very happy to note there is no model African Union.
There isn't.
Actually, that's good.
There isn't.
So stop to think about
my
that.
Nigerian colleagues, part of the implementation of this reform process, one of them has been doing an AU model in Nigeria. The African Union has made a decision. It's going to do that in the whole of the continent, so that we drill down to the new generation of African patriots and diplomats, and let them understand that this institution called the African Union, it's theirs, and that's what will make Africa a good place to be in.
Fantastic.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you for having this conversation with us. I mean, necessary for us to look into some of these
I think
things.
there's a lot more to unpack, so we're going to probably have to have you back and expand on a lot more. But I like your optimism. It's refreshing. I know a lot of us tend to sit back and think, oh, doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But knowing and being able to state and clearly voice the fact that we do need to have that push, and how we can try and create that push, but not as individuals, collectively. I think that has always been there. I believe, this is a personal opinion, I think there's a lot of negativity that comes out from trying a lot of times and then not necessarily seeing it, or maybe expectations a bit too high and not looking at those small steps. Those are probably the bigger wins.
Absolutely.
As opposed to trying to go for the whole piece of the cake in the first place.
The incremental ones. You know, one of the things that I saw in one of your discussions is, and I think you spoke to it, the idea of economic intelligence, where our embassies have to be. And that's a whole discussion. Another country, my favorite country on this, is Singapore. Out of New York now, they have a trade commissioner whose job, one, bring trade from Singapore into
the US,
into the US, and vice versa, create opportunities. Secondly, look at the American model. The American ambassador, his job is to make sure that his businesses cut deals. So he knocks on doors and says,
he's a salesman.
he's a salesman.
On a global
There you
That's
go.
a job
So
description.
we too
Yeah.
have to emulate that. The other thing is, for example, when I was in Berlin, one of the things that struck me was avocados. Avocado is a big deal. It's a big deal. So the intelligence officers cannot be looking at other things.
Yeah.
We should be saying, or if we don't have one for economics, we should have one for economics that says, Kenya is producing avocados at this. How can I get these avocados into Macro or to Edeka in downtown Berlin? What is the price? Why is it that Namibian beef ends up being in a big superstore, but we can't get Kenyan tea in the same places?
Yeah.
So that is where our intelligence now has to focus on in order to build
right.
on where we African leaders want the country to go to, to enable our small and medium-scale businesses thrive. People with 2 acres of avocado, can I sell it in Berlin? Yes, I can, and this is how to do it.
Right.
But that's another discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Indeed.
No problem.
And thank you very much for joining us in this one today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okoh and Waweru Njoroge.
Pleasure having you here.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.